what are the three main actions? Elevation of scapula, retraction of the scapula, and overhead abduction of the shoulder joint. Note that the abduction of the shoulder joint 0 to 15 degrees is done by our supraspinatus, 15 to 90 degrees is done by our deltoid, that is the medial or the acromial fibers, and the 90 to 180 degrees is done by our trapezius and also along with the serratus anterior. If you remember, this is nothing but overhead abduction, you can see here, of the shoulder joint. And next, let us see the glenohumeral elevation is 120 degrees with the scapular rotation is 60, together 180 degrees. It is in the ratio of 2:1. If you remember, if you see here 60 into 2, so 2:1 ratio. This may ask in your bits. And next, the levator scapula nerve supply C3 and C4 and also C5. C5 is nothing but the dorsal scapular nerve, C5 branch. So this we will learn in the brachial plexus. Next we can understand it. And the rhomboidus major and minor nerve supply is the dorsal scapular nerve C5. Again the dorsal scapular nerve. So dorsal scapular nerve supplies levator scapulae, rhomboidus major and also rhomboidus minor. So this may be asked as a question. So C5 supplies three muscles. And next we have the triangle of auscultation. So triangle of auscultation, you can see here the major triangle of auscultation. So this triangle of auscultation boundaries are medially by trapezius. Yeah, you can understand it here. So you can see medially by trapezius, laterally by the medial border of scapula, yes, and the base by the latissimus dorsi. So this is latissimus dorsi, base by the latissimus dorsi. It's used mainly for the auscultation of the lung sounds and also the cardiac orifice. Of course, as the name says auscultation, so we keep our stethoscope here and auscultate here. So and also we have one more triangle like this. There is nothing but the lumbar triangle of Petit. So boundaries of them are anteriorly we have our external orbic muscle, posteriorly we have our latissimus dorsi again, and also the base as a iliac crest. So the potential site for the internal hernia, it's nothing but this lumbar triangle of Petit. So note that the latissimus dorsi forms boundary for both. What both? That is our lumbar triangle of Petit and also triangle of auscultation. So this can be a question that the lumbar triangle of Petit and also the triangle of auscultation both have a common boundary, like that is our latissimus dorsi. And next coming to the serratus anterior muscle. So let us search for serratus anterior. So you can see these muscles, levator scapulae, rhomboidus minor and our rhomboidus major, and also this is our latissimus dorsi, and this is the external oblique. Yeah, here you can see the lumbar triangle of Petit as we have learned it before we have seen. And here you can see this is a serratus anterior muscle, so it has actually digitations. So you can see origin is by upper 8 ribs, so it is attached to upper 8 ribs, same as this way, the serratus anterior. So here you can see 8 digitations. Insertion is to the medial border of the scapula, and actions is protraction of scapula. Protraction is moving towards front of the scapula along with the pectoralis minor muscle, and also it useful in the overhead abduction of the shoulder. Abduction means moving away along with the trapezius muscle. And the nerve supply is long thoracic nerve, that is also known as the nerve of Bell. So the root value of this long thoracic nerve is C5, C6, C7 of our brachial plexus. And next, winging of the scapula is mainly due to the injury to the long thoracic nerve, that is also called known as palsy of serratus anterior. So this causes winging. So if scapula is mainly due to serratus anterior and also sometimes by trapezius. So serratus anterior is given greater importance when compared with trapezius. If both are present in the option, then we can choose both of them. And next coming to the anterior chest wall muscles. Of course, anterior chest wall muscles, we have our latissimus dorsi, origin is from the dorsum of the trunk and insertion to the humerus, that is floor of intertubular circles. If you remember this lady between two majors, so that one, this one. And next action is adduction, medial rotation, extension. So it is getting nearer to our body. Adduction, medial rotation and also extension. And nerve supply is by our thoracodorsal nerve. So latissimus dorsi nerve supply is thoracodorsal nerve. And next we have our pectoralis major muscle. So this origin is by anterior surface of trunk inserted to the lateral lip of intertubercular sulcus of humerus, and action again adduction, medial rotation, but here flexion. So why flexion is that pectoralis major muscle moves towards front side, actually is present in the anterior side. From the trunk it is attached to the anterior side. So if you remember, anterior side of the forearm or anterior side of upper limb is flexor department. So flexion. This anterior chest wall, latissimus dorsi is attaching from the trunk to our upper limb by posterior surface, by posterior side attachment. So posterior side, extensor compartment, so it is useful in extension. And next let us see the teres major and subscapularis. So teres major, as we seen before, it is supplied by the lower subscapular nerves, and the subscapularis is supplied by upper and lower subscapular nerve, that is the branch of the posterior cord of our brachial plexus. And next, clavipectoral fascia. So this is between the clavicle and the pectoralis minor, and it encloses our subclavius, pectoralis minor, and the ligaments derived are suspensory ligament of the axilla, also known as Jerdis ligament, costocoracoid ligament, that is the first costocartilage to coracoid process, and we have the structures piercing the clavipectoral fascia are cephalic vein, lateral pectoral nerve, and the thoracoacromial artery. These are the important points. So first, let us see the clavipectoral fascia. So here you can see this is our clavipectoral fascia having a clavicle and a pectoralis minor muscle. So these are the contents passing. So what are those? Thoracoacromial artery and our cephalic vein, and also here you can see this pectoralis major cut surface, short head and long head of biceps brachii muscle. So this is the clavipectoral fascia. Now let us see about pectoralis minor muscle. So it originates from 3, 4 and 5 ribs and insertion to the coracoid process of our scapula, and the action is mainly the protraction of the scapula. So scapula coming like this, towards front side. So that is protraction of scapula along with the serratus anterior. If you remember, even serratus anterior. So actually serratus anterior is located like this in the lateral side with 8 digitations as we discussed before. So along with serratus anterior and pectoralis minor are helpful for the protraction of the scapula. So note no action at the shoulder joint. Of course, pectoralis minor is here. It's no very related to our shoulder joint. In shoulder joint, the muscles related are the rotator cuff muscles. Okay, now let's understand our brachial plexus. If you remember, this is a brachial plexus diagram. So this I have simplified into this simple diagram. So here you can see. So the roots of the brachial plexus are C5, C6, C7, C8 and T1. So first write them in order. So next C5 and C6 together form our upper trunk. So roots, trunk, divisions and cords. So both C5 and C6 together form our upper trunk. So the upper trunk again have divisions, anterior and posterior division, and the anterior division along with the middle trunk's anterior division gives lateral cord. Okay, first leave that. First let us learn it in an order. So first C5, C6 together form upper trunk, gives anterior and posterior division. Okay, done. Next C7. C7 alone gives our middle trunk, and it also has the anterior and posterior division, and C8 and T1 together form the lower trunk, and it also have anterior and posterior, but right in reverse, that is anterior here and posterior here. So this one. Now let us understand how to form the cord. So you can see the first upper trunk anterior part and the middle trunk anterior part together form the lateral cord. So after going to lateral cord, you can remember it like C7 alone forms middle trunk, as C7 is only forming the middle trunk, but the cord of the C7 is formed by 3 posteriors, because here it's only 1. So it's sad, only 1. So now 3 should come and fulfill that. So all 3 posteriors together form the posterior cord in the middle trunk. And next, coming to the lower trunk is only formed by the anterior division, that is the medial cord. So the lateral cord, posterior cord and medial cord. So this is a simple form of a brachial plexus. So now let us see some of the important points. The root is emerging between the these roots are emerging between the scalenus anterior and the scalenus medial muscle, and the trunk is located in the posterior triangle of our neck, and the divisions are located before entering the axilla, and the cords and the branches are located in the axilla itself. So these are the cords and branches, cords and their branches. And now let us see the branches from the root. So the root, first one, the C5 root. If you remember the dorsal scapula, now we have discussed earlier, it supplies three muscles from if you remember. So C5 dorsal scapula now supplies our rhomboides major, minor and also levator scapular muscle. And next we have a C5, C6, C7. So C5, C6, C7, long thoracic nerve, the nerve of Bell, it is also known as long. And next the branches from the upper trunk gives the nerve to the subclavius, especially C5 and C6. So these are greater than the nerve to the suprascapular, that is C5 and C6. So the best option will be the nerve to the subclavius, that is branches from the upper trunk. So this is the upper trunk, so it's branches. And next we have suprascapular nerve. Suprascapular nerve arises as the first branch of the upper trunk, but it frequently springs directly from the ventral primary ramus of C5. So hence we are giving more importance to the subclavius when compared with the suprascapular when it comes to the branches from the upper trunk. And next let us see the branches from the cord. So cords, these cords have branches. So first let us see medial cord, right? So medial cord means where is it? Here. That is from the anterior division, lower trunk, C8 and T1, its root value. So the medial cord. The medial pectoral nerve, the medial cutaneous nerve of arm, the medial cutaneous nerve of forearm, the ulnar nerve, the medial root of median nerve. So these are the 5 branches of the medial cord. And next let us see the lateral cord branches. The lateral pectoral nerve, the musculocutaneous nerve, and also we have the lateral root of median nerve. So what these are doing? The lateral pectoral nerve pierces the clavipectoral fascia. If you remember, I showed that picture. In the musculocutaneous nerve, it pierces the coracobrachialis muscle, and the nerve of the anterior compartment of the arm is nothing but our musculocutaneous nerve. And next, muscles of the anterior compartment of the. So what are the anterior compartment muscles? Those are supplied by the musculocutaneous nerve. So what are those? Coracobrachialis, brachialis, and also biceps. So brachialis is attached to ulnar tuberosity, biceps is attached to a radial tuberosity. So the long head of biceps is intracapsular and the popliteus is intracapsular in the lower limb. So the anterior compartment muscles are this. This is a biceps brachii, this is our coracobrachialis, and this is our brachialis muscle. So these 3 muscles are supplied mainly by musculocutaneous nerve. Next let us see the musculocutaneous nerve, its distributions. So it continues as a lateral cutaneous nerve of a forearm. So this is arm, right? So it continues in the lateral side to the forearm. And next the medial cutaneous nerve of arm is a branch of medial cord of brachial plexus, if you remember, in medial cord. And the medial cutaneous nerve of forearm is also a branch of medial cord of brachial plexus. And the posterior cutaneous nerve of arm is a branch of radial nerve. And the posterior cutaneous nerve of forearm is a branch of radial nerve. So the upper lateral cutaneous nerve of arm is a branch of axillary nerve, and the lower cutaneous lateral nerve of arm is a branch of radial nerve. So the lateral cutaneous nerve of forearm is itself musculocutaneous nerve. And next let us see the branches of posterior cord. So the posterior cord gives the upper subscapular nerve, which supplies the upper part of subscapularis, and the thoracodorsal nerve, which supplies the latissimus dorsi, and the lower subscapularis nerve, which supplies the lower part of our subscapularis and also teres major, and the axillary nerve, which supplies the deltoid, teres minor, and it causes not this one. Next we have this axillary nerve even gives a cutaneous branch in the upper lateral cutaneous nerve of the arm. So this causes the regimental batch anesthesia. This is the upper lateral sensory loss. And next we have the radial nerve, which is the largest branch of this posterior cord. So it is the largest branch to remember, that is our radial nerve. And next the neck of humerus. The neck of humerus is having our axillary. Axillary is related with the axillary nerve, and the spiral groove backside posterior with the radial nerve, and behind medial epicondyle our ulnar nerve passes. So the humerus is related with these 3 types of nerves. And next let us see the Erb's palsy. So what is Erb's palsy? Erb's point, that is meeting point of 6 nerves. So this is the Erb's point, you can see 6 nerves, that is C5, C6, and you can see here suprascapular, subclavius, anterior and posterior division. So this is Erb's point. So if there is any problem, injury to the Erb's point, then it causes Erb's palsy. It causes the falling of an outstretched hand, falling on an outstretched hand, and it also has an obstetric complication. And the nerves affected are senior man, you can remember like that. That is the suprascapular nerve,
that is supraspinatus, infraspinatus supplying. And the radial nerve, that is brachioradialis and extensor carpi radialis longer and supinator supplier. And also we have the musculocutaneous nerve, as we read now just now, biceps brachialis, coracobrachialis. But remember, the coracobrachialis is not affected because it is also supplied by our C7 nerve. So as C7 is also not supplying it, so coracobrachialis is not affected. Only biceps and brachialis are affected in the case of musculocutaneous nerve. And next we have an axillary nerve giving to deltoid and teres major its supply, and now to the subclavius. So this is SRMAN. So S for suprascapular nerve, R for radial nerve, M for musculocutaneous nerve, A for axillary nerve, and N for nerve to subclavius. And next let us see the deformities. So what happens in Erb's palsy is the shoulder joint is deformed, that is adducted and also medially rotated, and the elbow joint is extended and the forearm is pronated like this. So it is called as the Porter's tip, or also known as policeman's tip deformity. Like policeman tip deformity is like this. And next we have Klumpke's paralysis. It is due to the lower trunk injury. Lower trunk, if you remember, the root value is C8 and T1. So it causes a hyperabduction. The nerves affected are the median nerve and ulnar nerve. Both are affected. And if ulnar nerve affected, the muscles of palm are paralysis because the ulnar nerve supplies the muscles of palm. And the deformity causes is known as claw hand, like this, claw hand. And next we have the white ramus. So if the white ramus of the T1 sympathetic fibers affected, it causes also Horner's syndrome. So note, the division of the brachial plexus will not give any branch. That is, you can see this roots have branches, trunk have branches, cords have branches, but the divisions never have branches. And next here you can see from some of the bits, the important points are: the fascia around the nerve bundle of the brachial plexus is derived from the prevertebral fascia, and the fascia around the brachial plexus is called the axillary sheath, and it covers the brachial plexus and also the axillary vessels. So the chronic retropharyngeal abscess in the TB may also spread to the axilla, also to supramediastinum, and the axillary sheath localizes the anesthetic solution to nerve plexus, that is the brachial plexus nerve block. So this takes place in brachial plexus nerve block. And next, the arterial supply to the brachial plexus is mainly by the subclavian and the vertebral artery. And next, the thoracodorsal nerve is the infraclavicular branch of the brachial plexus. And then the structures piercing the clavipectoral fascia are cephalic vein, thoracoacromial artery associated with veins and also lymphatics, and also the clavipectoral passing to the clavipectoral fascia is a lateral pectoral nerve. And next let us see the clavipectoral fascia. It envelopes the subclavius, pectoralis minor, and medially with the costocoracoid ligament, and laterally connected with the axillary fascia by the suspensory ligament of axilla. It is also known as Gerdy's ligament. So as we saw before clavipectoral fascia, you can recall it. And next we have the axillary nerve. Axillary nerve is affected mainly in the quadrangular space, because you know axillary nerve passes through the quadrangular space. Even we have discussed this. So the foramen of Vellepue, this is also known as foramen of Vellepue, and the passage for especially the nerve and vessels between the axilla and axilla anteriorly and the scapula posteriorly. So the contents here, again the axillary nerve, posterior circumflex humeral artery, and the vein. So this is all about our brachial plexus and some of the important points. Next let us see our radial nerve. So this is our radial nerve. So the radial nerve course is that radial nerve is the largest branch of the brachial plexus, if you remember, of the posterior cord. So its root value is C5, C6, C7, C8 and also T1. So you can see its inconstant contribution, and next it's formed in the axilla and gives branches to the medial and long head of triceps. So if you see here, this is the medial head of triceps and this is the long head of triceps. So it gives first to the medial and long head of triceps, and next through the lower triangular interval it passes. So this is the lower triangular interval, it passes through it and enters the posterior compartment. So this is the posterior side of the arm. So posterior compartment of the arm accompanied by the profunda brachii artery. And next in the posterior compartment, the radial nerve passes through the spiral groove. So this is the spiral groove, and after passing it, it gives branches to the medial head and the lateral head. So first it has give branches to the long head and the medial head. So later it gives branches to the medial head and the lateral head of the triceps branch. medial head and lateral head of triceps, branch to the medial head and also supplies to the anconeus muscle. So this is the smallest muscle in the back posterior compartment of our arm. It is the anconeus muscle. So it is also supplied by a radial nerve. And next enters the anterior compartment of the arm on the lateral side. So it enters the anterior compartment by the lateral side, lower aspect. So you can say this is the anterior compartment of the arm. So you can see this is the radial nerve where it has come finally. So this is the pose. So in the posterior compartment, what happens is the triceps is present as a 3 heads. If you see, it is having 3 heads. That is medial head, long head, and also our lateral head. And it is attached to the olecranon process of ulna. So if you remember, olecranon process is in posterior, so it is attached there. And action is mainly to extension of the elbow, because you know these are the posterior compartment muscles. Main action is extension. And next, injury below the spiral groove. If the triceps, if this radial nerve have a injury below the spiral groove, then what happens is that intact muscles are our triceps muscle is intact, anconeus muscle is intact and assist in the extension of elbow. So intact movement, as anconeus is present, triceps is present, of course the extension of elbow takes place. And next we have the radial nerve branches in the elbow. So what are the branches of radial nerve? The radial nerve passes laterally in between the brachialis and brachioradialis. So if you can see here, it passes between radialis and brachioradialis. So here you can see this one. This is the brachioradialis muscle, and also so after passing it gives the branches to the brachialis. It is brachialis is actually a hybrid muscle because it receives both the motor supply from the radial nerve and also the musculocutaneous nerve, and it's the brachioradialis and also ECRL, that is the extensor carpi radialis longus. So you can see this extensor carpi radialis longus muscle over here, extensor carpi radialis longus. So this is here. So it also gives branches to this. And next, the radial nerve below the elbow joint divides into 2 branches, that is the so below the elbow joints, that is this elbow. So below here it divides into superficial branch and deep branch. The superficial branch is a sensory branch and the deep branch is a motor branch. So the deep branch is also known as the posterior interosseous nerve. Why it is called as posterior interosseous nerve is that it pierces the supinator muscle. So you can see this is the supinator muscle. So you can see it is piercing and going back. So it pierces the supinator muscle and goes back. That is supplying the posterior compartment. So pierces the supinator, reaches the posterior compartment of our forearm. And next we have the posterior interosseous nerve. So what it does going backside? It supplies all muscles in the posterior compartment of forearm except our anconeus, brachioradialis and ECRL. So except anconeus, brachioradialis and extensor carpi radialis longus, all muscles are supplied by the posterior interosseous nerve of the branch of the radial nerve. And next, the low radial nerve palsy. So what is this? The injury of a radial nerve below the elbow before its division into superficial and this is important. Before its division, what happens is that what are the intact muscles are? Triceps, anconeus, brachioradialis. Brachioradialis is also called as shunt muscle, brachialis and also ECRL. ECRL is nothing but extensor carpi radialis longus, which extends the wrist. And the intact movements are the extension of elbow, extension of wrist. So the wrist drop is not seen in low radial nerve palsy. This is important. Why wrist drop is not seen? Because still ECRL is intact. That is because of intact muscle of ECRL. And the function loss is the loss of extension of metacarpopharyngeal joint, and there is also sensory loss. This is important. Even sensory loss is seen in low radial nerve palsy. Next, let us see the posterior interosseous nerve palsy. So this is nothing but the extension of elbow is normal here, that is the triceps and anconeus are intact, so extension of elbow is normal, and the extension of wrist is also normal because ECRL is also intact. But what is the problem is the extension of MCP joint, that is the metacarpopharyngeal joint is lost, so there is finger drop like this, and the wrist drop is not seen here also, and there is no sensory loss. So remember, in the low radial nerve palsy we can see sensory loss, but in posterior interosseous nerve palsy we can't see the sensory loss. There is no sensory loss. And what is about the superficial branch of radial nerve? So till now we understand the posterior branch of radial nerve which goes which pierces the supinator and goes backward and supplies posterior muscle. But what about the superficial branch? It does is a pass inferior to the brachioradialis and sensory supply to the lateral 3.5 digits in the dorsum. Dorsum is this one though. In the lateral 3.5 digits of the dorsum it supplies. So 3.5 means this 3. From 1, 2, 3 and half. This one half. And next, the recent update is that the lateral 2.5 digits in the dorsum are supplied by the superficial branch of radial nerve up to the proximal interphalangeal joint. And next, let us see what is Waardenburg syndrome. So the compression of the superficial branch of radial nerve during its course under the brachioradialis. So you can say this is the brachioradialis muscle we have seen here. So under its course, when it is passing below the brachioradialis, sometimes it is compressed. When it is compressed, there is loss of sensation in the lateral 3.5 digits. So whenever there is the compression of this brachioradialis and loss of sensation in the lateral 3.5 digits, then this is known as Waardenburg syndrome. So this is a complication. And next, what is Waardenburg sign? Waardenburg sign is that only our little finger is unable to adduct towards the ring finger. So this is the little finger, it remains like this. It is not able to adduct like this. Now you can say I can adduct, but it is not able to adduct in the Waardenburg sign. So this is known as Waardenburg sign due to the injury of the ulnar nerve. You know, our little finger and also this index finger, little finger and ring finger are supplied by our ulnar nerve. So whenever there is a problem in this, it leads to Waardenburg sign. So it affects the palmar interosseous. So this is our palm contains palmar interosseous muscle, which is mainly useful for adduction, and our dorsum contains dorsal interosseous, which is mainly for abduction. And next we'll see here extensor tendons reaching the distal phalanx. So what are the extensor tendons, which are extensor compartment reaching up to the distal phalanx? So these are like by DD, of course we have discussed now, dorsal distal expansion trifurcates into one medial band and two lateral bands. So what is the one medial band? Is that crossing the proximal, this is a proximal interphalangeal joint posteriorly and inserted to the middle phalanx. Action is extension of the proximal interphalangeal joint. See, now I am going to do like this. This is because of dorsal distal expansion. And next it has the two lateral bands. So these two lateral bands are like this on two lateral sides. They also cross the distal. They cross up to the distal interphalangeal joint posteriorly and inserted to the distal phalanx. So action is extension of distal IP joint. So the distal IP joint is extending because of these two lateral bands, and this middle, this first proximal IP joint is extending because of the medial band. So let us understand this. The tendons attached to DDE. So there are some of the tendons attached to a dorsal distal expansion, that is the lumbricals, the palmar interosseae and also dorsal interosseae. So these are known as wing tendons attached to DDA like wing. So this DDA are having wing like structure. This is mainly because of the lumbricals, palmar interosseae and also our dorsal interosseae muscles. And next let us see deformities of phalanges. So if phalanges are deformed, that is what? Mallet finger. Mallet finger is nothing but the flexion of the distal IP joint. Flexion of the distal IP joint, lateral band avulsion results in a mallet finger. So the mallet finger will be like this. And next we have the swan neck deformity. The distal IP joint flexion and hyperextension of proximal IP joint seen in rheumatoid conditions. So in mallet finger only this one like this, only this part, the distal part is like this, but in swan neck deformity the whole finger is like this. And what is Bowden's deformity? This is due to avulsion of medial band of flexion of proximal IP joint. If you remember, we've seen the medial band. What is medial band doing? It is mainly doing proximal interphalangeal joint. So here also what happens is that proximal IP joint flexion is affected. So like this, this is normal, only this part is like this. This is Bowden's deformity. And next let us see the extensor retinaculum. So the extensor retinaculum is present on the posterior surface. It is present here. So the extensor retinaculum tendons enter the dorsum through extensor retinaculum. Has the 6 compartments from lateral to medial side. So the muscles passing through the first compartment are abductor pollicis longus and extensor pollicis brevis, and the D quaternaris synovitis. It is due to involvement of abductor pollicis longus and extensor pollicis brevis. So this is important. Abductor pollicis longus and extensor pollicis brevis are involved in the D quaternaris syndrome. And the Flenck's test is positive if there is pain on the lower aspect of radius upon the ulnar deviation with the fish. So these all are the tests we need to do to confirm the equine synovitis. And the space between the first and third compartment is known as anatomical snuff box. So you can see this one, if I do like this, you can see a small space over here. This is the anatomical snuff box. So the boundaries are, the medially it is by third compartment, that is extensor pollicis longus, and laterally by the first compartment. What are these compartments? These are the compartments of extensor, nothing but extensor retinaculum. So these are forming, this extensor retinaculum are boundaries of our anatomical snuff box. So laterally it is containing the compartment of abductor, first compartment, that is the abductor pollicis longus and extensor pollicis brevis, and the roof is made up of skin, superficial fascia, cephalic vein, and also our superficial branch of radial nerve. And the floor is made up of radius, scaphoid, trapezium, and the base of first metacarpal bone, and also becoming extensor carpi radialis longus, extensor carpi radialis brevis, that is the extensor okay, done. And the content is a radial artery. So let us see the compartments first. So the first compartment is made by ABPL and EPB, and the second compartment is by ECRL and ECRP, and the third compartment by extensor pollicis longus, and the fourth compartment by extensor digitorum, extensor indicis, posterior interosseous nerve or pin, and the fifth compartment by extensor digiti minimi is going to little finger, and the sixth compartment is the extensor carpi ulnaris. So the first and second compartment cross 4 to 6 cm proximal to our wrist joint. So this leads to the friction of ECRL, ECRB, and causes the intersection syndrome. So intersection syndrome is caused by friction of ECRL and ECRB, that too by crossing the 4 to 6 cm proximal to the wrist joint. What is that? That is the first and second compartment. So what are first and second? That is ABPL, EPB, and our ECRL and ECRB, that is extensor carpi radialis longus, extensor carpi radialis brevis, abductor pollicis longus, and extensor pollicis brevis. So now let us see about our median nerve. So you can see this is our median nerve we are having. So the median nerve, this is our median nerve. The median nerve distribution in the forearm. Median nerve is formed by two roots mainly. The medial root, that is our medial cord, and the lateral root, lateral cord. So the medial root and the lateral root together form our medial nerve. The medial nerve is crossing the brachial artery from the lateral side to the medial side. And in the cubital fossa, the medial nerve is the middlemost structure, and the medial nerve enters the forearm by passing between the heads of the pronator teres muscle and supplies the flexors of the forearm. Of course, is the anterior surface, so flexors of the forearm. So the flexors of forearm are especially a flexor carpi radialis, that is radialis is towards the thumb, flexor carpi radialis, and flexor carpi ulnaris, and the palmaris longus, and also our FDS, that is flexor digitorum superficialis. So, and also flexor digitorum profundus is also supplied by them. So let us see the flexors of forearm supplying the superficial, that is origin medial epicondyle. So superficial origin is medial epicondyle, and medial epicondyle is towards ulnar side, the medial epicondyle. So we need to remember only one thing, that the ulnar nerve supplies only the flexor carpi ulnaris and the medial half of the flexor digitorum profundus. Other than that, all the flexors of the forearm are supplied by a median nerve. And next let us see the Ganter's muscle and jersey finger, the difference. So you can see the Ganter's muscle. So the Ganter's muscle, the flexor pollicis longus, flexor pollicis longus goes to our thumb. So flexor pollicis thumb may have an accessory head sometimes. If it has accessory head in some patients, then it is known as accessory head of flexor pollicis longus, then it is known as Ganter's muscles. So AHFPL is present. It compresses the anterior interosseous nerve. This is important. And next, what is jersey finger? It is due to the evolution of flexor digitorum profundus tendon, causes the loss of flexion of distal IP joint. So distal IP joint loss of function, then it is jersey finger. And next, median nerve distribution in the palm. So in the palm, how the median nerve is distributed. So the median nerve enters the palm by passing below the flexor retina. This is important. So flexor retinaculum is present here. So it is passing below, not above. Only above the palmar branches are passing the above. So in palm divides into medial and lateral branch. Again it is divided into the medial branch and the lateral branch. Medial branch is always towards the little finger side, and the lateral branch is towards the thumb side. So before dividing, it gives motor branch, that is known as recurrent branch, supplies the thenar eminence. So this is our thenar eminence, supplies the thenar eminence, and also the lumbricals 1 and 2. What are the lumbricals 1 and 2? This is the lumbrical 1, there is thumb, and lumbrical 2. And next you can see the muscles supplied by the median nerve in the palmar loaf. You can remember like a loaf of bread. So lumbricals 1 and 2, O means opponens pollicis, A means abductor pollicis brevis, F means flexor pollicis brevis. So these are the thenar eminence muscles. So what are the thenar eminence muscles we have understood now. Lateral branches are subdivided into the proper palmar digital branch, that is a sensory distribution, which supplies the lateral 3.5 digits on the palmar side, and the dorsal lead supplies distal and middle phalanx of the lateral 3.5 digits. So the palmar branch of the medial nerve passes above the flexor retinaculum and gives the sensory supply to the thenar eminence. So only the palmar branch passes above the flexor retinaculum, but the median nerve itself passes below the flexor retinaculum. And next let us see the median nerve injury. So what happens if the medial nerve is injured? So in the supracondylar fracture, the anterior interosseous nerve is greatly injured when compared with the median nerve. And all the forearm flexors are supplied by the median nerve are paralysis. And the flexor carpi ulnaris is normal on the wrist flexion, and wrist deviates towards the ulnar side, because ulnar side is mainly supplied by the ulnar nerve but not the medial nerve. The loss of pronation, that is both pronator teres, pronator quadratus are affected, and the flexor digitorum profundus FDP, that is the lateral half, affected. Loss of flexion of the proximal or distal IP joint of index and the middle finger, because the index and the middle finger are mainly supplied by our median nerve. And the benediction deformity, if the index alone, then it is known as point index finger deformity. Pointing index finger deformity. And next let us see the FDS. So FDS, flexor digitorum superficial is paralyzed, and the loaf muscles are paralyzed, which leads to the thenar eminence atrophy. And the sensory loss is seen over the lateral 3.5 digits over the thenar eminence, because the thenar eminence is supplied by our median nerve. And the eighth term deformity is due to opponens pollicis involvement. So when opponens pollicis is involved, we can see the eighth term deformity. And next, the supination is mainly done by our supinator, and it's also supplied by the posterior interosseous nerve. So remember, supinator is supplied by the posterior interosseous nerve. And next, wrist lash injury. So this is the most common affected nerve is the median nerve, and it's due to self-inflicted cut in the distal forearm. So if we cut here, this is known as we are cutting here is known as wrist lash injury, and it is mainly supplied. Sorry, the bicep muscle is supplied by okay. So due to self-inflicted cut in the distal forearm in the wrist region, all the forearm flexors supplied by the median nerve are normal. On wrist flexion, no ulnar deviation is seen. Pronation is not affected. FDP lateral half and FDS are normal. No benediction hand deformity and no pointing index finger. But what is seen is that loaf muscles are paralyzed and leads to atrophy of the thenar muscle that results in the eighth thumb deformity. This is important. And next, there is loss of sensory supply over the lateral 3.5 digits and also thenar eminence. And next, what is carpal tunnel syndrome? So the compression of the medial nerve while passing through the below the flexor, already the medial nerve is passing below the flexor retinaculum, and if it is compressed further, then it leads to the carpal tunnel syndrome. So the features are same as the wrist slash injury, but except the sensory supply over the thenar eminence is normal. So there is no sensory supply, but here the sensory supply is still normal because there is palmar branch above the flexor retinaculum. And the cubital fossa boundaries. So the cubital fossa medially, so cubital fossa is nothing but is present here. It's a triangle in a above our elbow. So its lateral border is pronator teres, and medially it is having the lateral border of pronator teres, and laterally it has a medial border of brachioradialis, and apex is the meeting point of both this brachioradialis and pronator teres, and the base is the imaginary line connecting the two epicondyles of the humerus. So the cubital fossa is a triangular shaped fossa in the front of the elbow, and the roof is formed by the bicipital aponeurosis, which is derived from the biceps tendon median cubital vein. And the floor is formed by the brachialis muscle and also the supinator muscle. So what are the contents of the cubital fossa? You can remember it like a mnemonic by MBBS, that is a median nerve, brachial artery, biceps tendon, and also a superficial branch of radial nerve. So the supination is done by our biceps brachii and supinator is supplied by a pin, that is posterior interosseous nerve, posterior branch of our median nerve, and the biceps is of course supplied by a musculocutaneous nerve, which is an anterior compartment muscle. So by this we complete our median nerve. Let's start with our ulnar nerve. So here you can see this is the ulnar nerve passing towards our little finger side. So the ulnar nerve is actually a branch of medial cord of the brachial plexus. There is the anterior division of the lower trunk, that is our C8 and T1. So it supplies the muscles of the palm mainly. So ulnar nerve supplies mainly muscles of the palm. And then sometimes C7 fibers from the lateral cord also supply the flexor digitorum profundus, that is FDP, in the medial half, and also flexor carpi ulnaris. So the root value of ulnar nerve is C7, C8 and also T1. And the course of nerve is that it passes behind the medial epicondyle. So you can see this is the medial epicondyle of humerus passing behind the medial epicondyle. And next it reaches, it enters the forearm, passes between the FDP, that is flexor digitorum profundus, and also flexor carpi ulnaris, FCU and FDP, and it passes in the forearm. And next it enters the palm above the flexor retinaculum. So if you remember, the median nerve passes below the flexor retinaculum, but the ulnar nerve is passing above the flexor retinaculum and lies mainly in a Guyon's canal. So ulnar nerve is passing above the flexor retinaculum in a Guyon's canal. And next course of the nerve is completed, and ulnar nerve is also divided into the superficial branch and the deep branch. So the superficial branch mainly supplies the palmaris brevis and the medial 1.5 digits of the palm. Only medial 1.5 digits. And the deep branch is a motor branch which supplies all muscles of the palm except the loaf muscles, because the loaf muscles are supplied by our median nerve. So what are the loaf muscles? We know lateral 2 lumbricals, opponens pollicis, abductor pollicis, of course. So thumb side, you can remember like that, all thumb side is supplied by our median nerve and all little finger side is supplied by our ulnar nerve. So Pollock's sign, what is Pollock's sign? Is that loss of flexion of interphalangeal joints. So you can see this here. So Pollock's sign is nothing but the loss of flexion of interphalangeal joints of the medial 1.5, that is nothing but our little finger and ring finger are not able to flex, So these two fingers, that is Pollock's sign, deformity in these two fingers. And next, what is Wartenberg's sign? We already discussed loss of adduction of fifth finger, that is our little finger towards this, adduction is missing. This is palmar introstate, adduction is missing. And next note, Wartenberg syndrome is mainly due to injury to the superficial branch of radial nerve. And next, Forman sign or Forman test. What is this? This test is to for the adductor pollicis positive Forman test. So compensatory flexion at the interphalangeal joint of the thumb. So actually, whenever if you catch any paper, if it is normal, it should be like this. But if it is like this, then this is positive test for the Pollock's Forman sign. So it's applied by the anterior interosseous nerve branch of the median nerve. And next, the lumbricals. Lumbricals are actually 4 in number. That is, you can see these are lumbricals. 1 and 2 are unipennate. So this 1, 2 unipennate. 3 and 4 are bipennate. 3 and 4 are medial and they are bipennate. And they are supplied by the deep branch of ulnar nerve. So 3 and 4 are supplied by deep branch of ulnar nerve. This unipennate one are supplied by our median nerve. And next, origin is by FDP. So lumbricals are formed mainly by flexor digitorum profundus tendon. And insertion is by dorsal digital expansion, that is on the posterior side, extensor tendon. And the action is flexion of metacarpophalangeal joint and also extension of interphalangeal joint. So in the position will be like this. And next we have the palmar interosseum. Palmar interosseum, palm side. So these are 4 in number, all are unipennate. Action is nothing but adduction of fingers. That is pad, that is PAD, adduction, P palmar interosseum. Flexion of MCP joint and extension of IP joint. It is also like this. And next, not present in the middle finger. Remember that palmar interosseum is not present in our middle finger. And next, origin and attachment. So 1 and 2 arise from the ulnar side of 1 and 2 metacarpal bone attached to the 1 and 2 dorsal digital expansion. And 3 arise from the radial side of 4. As 3 is missing, so the number changes. So 1 and 2, 1, 2, but 3 will be for this one and 4 will be for this one. So that's it. And next, no third metacarpal, no palmar interosseum. And dorsal interosseum on the dorsal side. So on the dorsal side we have 4 in number. They are bipennate. All are bipennate, supplied by deep branch of ulnar nerve. and action is mainly abduction of finger. Abduction means like this, abduction of finger. As abduction should takes place away, so there will be radial and ulnar side, so that thing you need to be careful about that. There is no attachment of dorsal interossei. So for first and fifth metacarpals there is. So in palmar interossei the middle finger doesn't have. In the dorsal interossei the little finger and the thumb finger doesn't have attachment. So attachment is the first radial side of second digit index finger, second radial side of third digit, and third one is ulnar side of third digit, and fourth one is also ulnar side of the fourth digit. So the mid palmar space. What is the mid palmar space? I think everyone knows this is the mid palmar space. Mid palmar space boundaries are anteriorly we have palmar aponeurosis, superficial palmar arch, FDP, FDS to the 3, 4, 5 metacarpals enclosed in a ulnar bursa. So ulnar bursa, this on medial side we have ulnar bursa and 2, 3, 4 lumbricals. And posteriorly we have 3, 4, 5 metacarpals fascia over interosseous muscle. And medially we have medial palmar septal, laterally intermediate palmar septa, and proximally space of Parona. And distally it extends into 2, 3, 4 web space through lumbrical canal. And the thenar space is this one, and thenar space boundaries are anteriorly palmar aponeurosis, FDS, FTP to the second metacarpal, and the first lumbrical, that is our thumb, radial bursa. So towards the thumb, there is radial bone, so we have radial bursa, and here we have ulnar bursa. Radial bursa only encloses the flexor pollicis longus, and ulnar bursa encloses both FDS and FDP, and the radial bursa around the flexor pollicis longus. So and next posteriorly we have oblique head of adductor pollicis, medially intermediate palmar septum. So remember intermediate palmar septum is here, intermediate. And also laterally lateral palmar septum, proximally space of Parona, and distally first web space. So note infections from the index finger spread to the thenar space, because index finger, thumb, all to the thenar space. This is a hypothenar space, and also this is supplied by ulnar now, this is by mainly median now. So here we complete our ulnar now. So let us start with the vessels of upper limb. So in the vessels of upper limb mainly we have our subclavian. Subclavian continues our axillary continues as brachial, and brachial two terminal branches, the radial and ulnar. So first let us start with the subclavian artery. So subclavian artery extends only till, so you can see the subclavian artery extends only till outer border of a first rib. So the scalenus anterior muscle divides the subclavian artery into 3 parts. So what are the 3 parts? The first part is, so you can remember it as VIT-SIT. So the first part is vertebral artery, internal thoracic artery, and the thyrocervical trunk. So the thyrocervical trunk is again divided into 3 parts. That is suprascapular artery, inferior thyroid artery, and transverse cervical artery. The transverse cervical artery has 2 branches, superficial and deep. The deep may sometimes replace the dorsal scapular actually. Actually, the dorsal scapular artery is the third part of our subclavian artery, and the second part is a costocervical trunk done. And the axillary artery. So after the subclavian artery, it enters into axillary part, axillary artery. So axillary artery from the outer part of the first rib up to the lower part of the teres major. And next the brachial artery. So axillary artery comes in brachial artery in our arm. So the brachial artery from the lower part of the teres major up to the level of neck of radius. So the axillary artery is again divided into 3 parts by a pectoralis minor muscle. So what are the 3 parts? The first part is the superior thoracic artery, the second part is the lateral thoracic artery, and also thoracoacromial artery, and the third part is a subscapular artery. Subscapular artery also gives the circumflex scapular artery, and the anterior and the posterior circumflex humeral artery are also part of the third part of our axillary artery. And the thoracoacromial artery is the second part, second division one. It pierces the clavipectoral fascia, and it has mainly 4 branches. Those are acromial branch, pectoral branch, clavicular branch, and also deltoid branch. So all branches of the axillary artery supply the mammary gland except the anterior and posterior circumflex humeral vessel. This is important. And the brachial artery. So what are the important branches of the brachial artery? So the profunda brachii artery, that is the radial collateral artery, and the superior ulnar collateral artery, and the inferior collateral ulnar artery. And the terminal branches are radial artery, ulnar artery at the level of the neck of the radius. So ulnar artery, the common interosseous artery, is divided into anterior and posterior. Anterior is above interosseous membrane and posterior is behind, that is So the anterior interosseous artery pierces the interosseous membrane, and the superficial palmar arch is a continuation of the ulnar artery, and this superficial palmar arch is completed on the lateral side by the superficial palmar branch of radial artery to the thumb. To the thumb it is known as atria pollicis longus. So superficial palmar arch has two branches, that is one proper palmar distal branch, ulnar side of little leaf finger, and three common palmar distal branch is divided into two proper branches. So superficial palmar arch is on medial side, that is continuation of ulnar artery, and the lateral side superior palmar branch of radial artery. So superficial palmar arch is mainly of ulnar artery, and the deep one is by radial artery. So the artery principal pollicis artery is artery to the branch of the radial artery. And the radialis indicis artery. Radialis indicis artery gives the radial side of the index finger, and the branches of this are, so the arteria principis pollicis artery and the radialis indicis artery are the branches of the radial artery. So now deep palmar arch. So the deep palmar arch is continuation of our radial artery. So the superficial palmar arch is continuation of ulnar artery, but the deep palmar branch is continuation of radial artery and is completed on the ulnar side by the deep branch of the ulnar artery. So as in superficial palmar branch, it is continuation of ulnar artery but completed by radial artery on the radial side. So same like to this deep palmar arch. And deep palmar, remember that deep palmar arch is proximal, that is reverse according to its name. It's deep palmar arch but it lies proximal, and the superficial palmar arch lies distal. And next, Allen's test. So what is this test? We do this test to see the potency of radial and ulnar artery. This occlude the both arteries pressure. So first we need to occlude both arteries over the wrist, and next ask the patient to make a fist like this, and next the hand will become pale because both arteries are occluded, so the hand becomes pale, and release of the pressure on the radial side. So we need to release the pressure on the radial side, that is this side. So if we release the pressure on radial side, it turns from the pale this pale color to pink color. So if we see the change in the color of the palm, then the radial artery is patent. If not, it's not. So the test then similarly for ulnar artery too. So next let us see the scapular anastomosis. So scapular anastomosis is nothing but which is taking around the scapula. The anastomosis is between the first part of the subclavian and the third part of the axillary artery. This is important. The first part of subclavian and the third part of axillary artery. Anastomosis is nothing but scapular anastomosis. So it takes place mainly in the inferior angle of scapula, if you remember, inferior angle of scapula and the body of the scapula, and also there is a minor anastomosis taking over the acromion process of a scapula. So first let us see at the inferior angle. It is the inferior angle, it is by the dorsal scapular artery and also the subscapular artery. So you can remember dorsal scapular artery is belonging to the first part of subclavian, and the third part of axillary arteries are subscapular arteries. So these both anastomosis. And next coming to the body of scapula. In the body of scapula we have suprascapular artery, dorsal scapular artery belonging to first subclavian branch, and the circumflex scapular artery belonging to the third axillary part. So these anastomosis in the body of scapula. And next minor anastomosis takes place over acromion process, that is a posterior circumflex humeral artery, that is of third part of axillary artery, thoracoacromial artery. Thoracoacromial artery of course is the second part, but this also takes place in a minor anastomosis over our acromion process, and also the suprascapular artery. So this suprascapular artery of first part of subclavian artery. So this 1 to 3 arteries. These 3 arteries anastomosis over the acromion process. And next coming to the supracondylar of humerus. So if in the supracondyle region of the humerus there is a fracture. So the deep palmar arch is continuation of our radial artery. So the superficial palmar arch is continuation of ulnar artery. But the deep palmar branch is continuation of radial artery and is completed on the ulnar side by the deep branch of the ulnar artery. So as in superficial palmar branch it is continuation of ulnar artery but completed by radial artery on the radial side. So same like to this deep palmar arch. And deep palmar, remember that deep palmar arch is proximal, that is reverse according to its name. It's deep palmar arch but it lies proximal, and the superficial palmar arch lies distal. And next, Allen's test. So what is this test? We do this test to see the potency of radial and ulnar artery. This occlude the both arteries pressure. So first we need to occlude both arteries over the wrist, and next ask the patient to make a fist like this, and next the hand will become pale because both arteries are occluded, so the hand becomes pale, and release of the pressure on the radial side. So we need to release the pressure on the radial side, that is this side. So if we release the pressure on radial side, it turns from the pale this pale color to pink color. So if we see the change in the color of the palm, then the radial artery is patent. If not, it's not. So that is done similarly for ulnar artery too. So next let us see the scapular anastomosis. So scapular anastomosis is nothing but which is taking around the scapula. The anastomosis between the first part of the subclavian and the third part of the axillary artery. This is important. The first part of subclavian and the third part of axillary artery. Anastomosis is nothing but scapular anastomosis. So it takes place mainly in the inferior angle of scapula. If you remember, inferior angle of scapula and the body of the scapula. And also there is a minor anastomosis taking over the acromion process of a scapula. So first let us see at the inferior angle. It is the inferior angle, it is by the dorsal scapular artery and also the subscapular artery. So you can remember dorsal scapular artery is belonging to the first part of subclavian and the third part of axillary arteries are subscapular arteries. So these both anastomosis. And let's come into the body of scapula. In the body of scapula we have suprascapular artery, dorsal scapular artery belonging to first subclavian branch and the circumflex scapular artery belonging to the third axillary part. So these anastomosis in the body of scapula. And next minor anastomosis takes place over acromion process, that is a posterior circumflex humeral artery, that is third part of axillary artery, thoracoacromial artery. Thoracoacromial artery of course is the second part, but this also takes place in a minor anastomosis over our acromion process, and also the suprascapular artery. So this suprascapular artery of first part of subclavian artery. So this 1 to 3 arteries. These 3 arteries anastomosis over the acromion process. And next coming to the supracondylar of humerus. So if in the supracondyle region of the humerus there is a fracture, then what happens? The nerve injured mainly is anterior interosseous nerve is greater than median nerve. And next the artery injured is a brachial artery and causes a deformity. So if what happens if brachial artery is injured, that is Volkmann ischemic contracture. It is due to the laceration of the brachial artery. And next from which we have some of the important points about the Allen test. So if the Allen test is negative, it means that ulnar circulation is inadequate. Hence the radial artery should not be punctured. So this is an important point. And next the dialysis process requires at least 250 to 500 milliliters per minute of the minimum venous flow rate. So this is one more important point. Usually the most common in the radial artery anastomose to cephalic vein in the wrist, and the brachial artery is anastomose to mainly cephalic vein at the elbow. And next, the palmar venous network in the palm of the hand gives rise to median antebrachial vein, and also the median antebrachial is the superficial vein of the anterior of the forearm and drains the superficial structures of the forearm and also wrist. So it ascends to the cubital fossa where it drains to the medial cephalic and the medial basilic veins, collectively the medial cubital vein in an inverted Y-shaped configuration. And next, the dorsal venous network on the dorsum of the hand, that is here, gives rise to cephalic and basilic veins. And next, the antecubital or the median cubital vein is preferred for the direct blood investigations. And the median cubital vein connects the cephalic vein to the basilic vein at the roof of the cubital fossa and lies the superficial to bicipital aponeurosis and is used for the IV injections mainly, and also the blood transfusion and withdrawal process. So all the injection takes place in the median cubital vein. And next, cephalic vein. Cephalic vein begins as the radial continuation. So on the radial side, that is towards the thumb side, our cephalic vein is present of dorsal venous arch and runs on the roof of the anatomical snuff box. And next ends in the axillary vein connected to the basilic vein by median cubital vein. So preferred site for the short-term IV cannula. And next, the basilic vein. It drains the ulnar end of the dorsal venous arch, passing on the medial aspect of forearm and pierces the deep fascia at elbow, and also join the vena comitans of the brachial artery, forming at the axillary vein at the lower border of the teres major. And next, the cephalic vein drains into the axillary vein by 2 routes. So what are those 2 routes? First one is the cephalic vein directly drains into axillary vein after piercing the clavipectoral fascia. So the cephalic vein into the axillary vein. And next, second one is the same amount of venous blood is drained to the basilic vein through the median cubital vein. That is the cephalic vein to the medial cubital vein, and next to the basilic vein, and again to the axillary vein. So this is the course of cephalic vein and the basilic vein. And the cephalic vein is a preaxial vein, and the preaxial vein of the dorsal venous plexus is the cephalic vein, and the postaxial vein of the dorsal venous plexus, dorsal venous arches, basilic vein. Now let's check out the preaxial border and the postaxial border. So in the embryo, the preaxial border is cranially placed over the limb border,
and in embryo the postaxial border is in the caudally placed limb border. So this is cranially placed and that is caudally placed. And next in adults, the lower limb inner border is by preaxial and greater saphenous vein, and the upper limb outer border, that is cephalic vein. So cephalic vein is towards the preaxial border, that is this side, preaxial border. And the postaxial border in the lower limb outer border, that is lesser saphenous vein, and in the upper limb the inner border is the basilic vein. And next let us see the apical group of lymph nodes are the terminal axillary lymph nodes, and the lymphatic drainage of the axillary nodes follows anterior, posterior and lateral groups, next to the central group and finally to the apical group. So apical group then drains into the supraclavicular lymph nodes. So the lateral group of the axillary nodes lies posterior medial to the axillary vein. The anterior group of axillary nodes lie near lateral thoracic vessels. And all lymphatics from the upper limb drain into axilla. The axillary lymph nodes collectively drain entire upper limb, breast and also trunk above the umbilicus. And the axillary nodes are divided into 5 groups, that is lateral or humeral, anterior or pectoral, posterior or subscapular, central and apical. This we have already discussed. Now let us see where it is located, what are its efferents and what are its efferents. So first humeral and lateral group. So it is located in the posterior medial to the axillary vein, and the efferents are whole limb except the vessels accompanying the cephalic veins, and the efferents are central nodes, apical nodes, inferior deep cervical nodes. And next the pectoral and anterior group. It is located at the long lateral thoracic vessels, and the efferents are skin and muscle of supraumbilical, anterior lateral body wall and breast, and the efferents are central nodes and apical nodes. Next the subscapular or posterior group. So the location is along the subscapular vessels, and the efferents are skin and muscle of inferior posterior region of neck and dorsal aspect of trunk up to the iliac crest, and the efferents are central nodes, apical nodes. Next the central group. The central group located embedded in the axillary pad of fat, and efferents are all preceding groups and efferents are apical groups. And next the apical group. It is embedded in the axillary pad of fat, and the efferents are accompanying the cephalic vein, and the efferents unite as subclavian trunk. Right trunk drains to jugulo, subclavian venous junction, and also left trunk ends in thoracic duct. So next let us see some of the important bits which we need to know in the upper limb. So the boundaries of quadrangular space, superiorly capsule of shoulder joint, teres minor, and inferiorly teres major, medially long head of triceps, laterally surgical neck of humerus. So these are again we are going to revise these points. And quadrangular space syndrome, that is, it is a condition caused mainly by hypertrophy or fibrosis of the quadrangular space muscle which impinge on the axillary nerve, and the patient presents with a weakness of shoulder movement. And next, the triangular interval contains the radial nerve and profunda brachia vessels. We already know this. And the triangular interval is nothing but lower triangular space. It's different from the lower triangular space, that is upper triangular space. It's different from the triangular space and also upper triangular space. And next, no major nerve pass in the triangular space. It condenses only scapular circumflex vessels. And the triangular interval of the lower triangular space have the three borders, that is above subscapularis anteriorly, teres major posteriorly, and medially by long head of triceps and laterally by humerus. So the contents of the triangular interval are radial nerve, profunda brachia artery, deep artery of arm, and also veins. So cubital fossa, laterally we have brachioradialis, medially we have pronated teres, superior line joining the medial and lateral epicondyles, and the contents are brachial artery, median nerve, biceps brachii tendon. So this is just revision. We already seen all this before. And the bicipital aponeurosis is nothing but called as grace of God tendon, because it protects the important contents of the fossa, that is the brachial artery and the median nerve, and it is the least tender region for the peripheral intravenous access, made by phlebotomy much easier. And also the radial nerve may be present in the cubital fossa sometimes. So this is important. And the superficial branch of radial nerve forms the roof of the anatomical softbox. So boundaries are laterally we have APL, EPB, and medially we have APL. Roof is by cephalic vein and superior branch of radial nerve. And the floor is by radial styloid, scaphoid, trapezium, and first metacarpal. And the only content is the radial artery. Next, the flexor retinaculum or carpal tunnel has the 10 structures in total, that is 4 tendons of FDS, 4 of FDP, both in common synovial sheath of ulnar bursa, and also 1 median nerve and also 1 FPL
in radial bursa, FPL, flexor pollicis longus. And next, medially we have superficial slip that is known as volar carpal ligament forms the Guyon's canal, so contain the ulnar nerve and also vessels. And laterally we have the deep slip that is FCR tendon only content. And the carpal tunnel tendons are FDS, FDP and FPL. So next let us see extensor retinaculum. So medially it has pisiform and triquetral bones, laterally anterior border of radius, and first compartment is having APL, EPB, second compartment ECRL and ECRB, third compartment EPL, fourth compartment ED, EI, and posterior and anterior, posterior interosseous nerve and anterior interosseous artery. And fifth we have EDM, sixth we have ECU. So DDE or extensor expansion, that is dorsal distal expansion by extension tendon expanding, that is extensor expansion, and location back of the digits dorsal distal expansion. Extensor making expansion are ED and EPL. Muscles joining the expansion are EDM, EI and EPB. Extensor expansion triangular hood attachments are shape of expansion, apex by distal phalanx, central region, middle phalanx in thumb attached to proximal phalanx, and the corner of the base is by sides of MCP joint in thumb attached to muscles, and the extensor hood by lumbricals, interosseous ED muscles in thumb, adductor pollicis and abductor pollicis brevis. So these are some of the important points. Next let us see flexor retinaculum. So we know flexor muscles of our forearm are divided into superficial and deep. So superficial muscles are pronator teres, flexor carpi radialis, palmaris longus, flexor carpi ulnaris, and flexor digitorum superficialis, because superficialis. And deep we have flexor digitorum profundus, that is deep, and flexor pollicis longus, and also pronator quadratus. So now let us see all flexor muscles of the forearm pass through the flexor retinaculum except the pronator teres and quadratus. They do not pass because their function is only for pronation, so they do not need to pass through the palm muscle because they don't have any function in the palms. And next, attachments lateral side, medial side. Lateral side it is attached by a tubercle of scaphoid and also to the crest of trapezium, medially attached to the pisiform and hook of hamate. And next, on the lateral side, the flexor carpi radialis tendon pass between the slips of retinaculum, because flexor carpi radialis on lateral, because radial bone passing to the thenar eminent side. And next, pisiform bone type is a sesamoid bone and is derived from the flexor carpi ulnaris. So flexor carpi ulnaris forms a bone, sesamoid bone, that is a pisiform bone. And next, ulnar bursa. As the name says, ulnar bursa is towards the ulnar side, synovial sheet over the flexor digitorum superficialis and also flexor digitorum profundus. So both FDS and FDP are enclosed by a synovial sheet. Then it is known as ulnar bursa. So only to the little finger. So ulnar bursa is present only to the little finger. So continues with the tendon of little finger. Infection of little finger spreads to the ulnar bursa because only little finger. So infection easily passes there. And the radial bursa, as the name says, radial towards radial side. So synovial sheet over the tendon of flexor pollicis longus, because flexor pollicis longus is the only muscle of anterior compartment going to the thumb. So FPL is enclosed in a synovial sheet, then it is known as radial bursa. It continues to the thumb. And the median nerve pass between this radial and ulnar bursa below the flexor retinaculum. And the Guyon's canal is above the flexor retinaculum, that is the roof containing the volar carpal ligament, flexor carpal ligament, and the contents are the ulnar nerve and also ulnar artery. So structures to ulnar nerve passes above the flexor retinaculum, median nerve passes below the flexor retinaculum, and the structures passing above the flexor retinaculum are palmar cutaneous branch of ulnar nerve, palmar cutaneous branch of median nerve, superficial palmar branch of radial artery, and also the tendons of middle three fingers doesn't communicate with the ulnar bursa, which ends as a blind diverticulum. And next, the carpal tunnel syndrome. So the compression of the median nerve below the flexor retinaculum is nothing but carpal tunnel syndrome. So we do phalanx test to confirm it, that is a wrist flexion in an inverted position, tingling sensation in the lateral 3.5 digits. Then we can say it's a positive test. And next, let us see breast and mammary gland. So breast contains a mammary gland in the superficial fascia and also the nipple and the areolar complex, of course. And the extension is vertically to 2nd to 6th rib in the mid-clavicular line, and the horizontally in the lateral border of the sternum to the mid-axillary line along the 4th rib. And next, it has a suspensory ligament known as Cooper's ligament is anchoring the parenchyma of the gland to the pectoral fascia. And the nipple. The nipple is in the nulliparous woman. It is in the fourth intercostal space and supplied by the fourth intercostal nerve. Fourth intercostal space, fourth intercostal nerve, and pierced by 15 to 20 lactiferous ducts. And the areola is a circular pigmented area around the nipple. And the mammary gland is a modified sweat gland. So these are some of the important points. And next, the deep relations are the memory bed. The memory bed is covered by the deep fascia, that is pectoralis major in the medial 2/3, and the serratus anterior in the upper 2 digitations, and laterally 1/3 of extensor oblique aponeurosis. So extensor oblique aponeurosis present inferior medially. It separates it from the rectus sheet. And next, the axillary tail of Spence is the upper and outer quadrant of the mammary gland, extending it to the axilla and passing through the foramen of Langer. So this is all very simple topic we know. And the retromammary space. So it contains a loose connective tissue between the deep part of the gland and the fascia over the mammary bed. So it perforated the branch of internal thoracic artery, that is the first part of subclavian artery. Of course, we'll learn it. And the all branch of axillary artery except the anterior and posterior circumflex humeral, and also the intercostal artery. So the nerve supply is 4 to 6 intercostal nerve. And subcuticle lymphatics are blocking in the carcinoma of the breast, that is giving the orange skin appearance, also known as PUD orange. So now let us see the lymph drainage. So upper lateral quadrant is draining the lymph to the anterior axillary nodes or the central apical. Next to the central and finally to apical or pectoral nodes drains here. And next, upper medial to the internal mammary nodes. Lateral to the posterior intercostal nodes, and lateral medial to the lower medial to the subperitoneal plexus, and 75% drain into the anterior axillary node, 20% only to the internal mammary node, and 5% to the posterior intercostal node. So we have some important points from bits. That is the nipple supplied by the fourth intercostal nerve, that is the anterior branch of the lateral cutaneous branch, and the mechanoreceptor for suckling are Misenus corpus and Meganus descending. And the breast is innervated by the anterior and lateral branches of 4 and 6 intercostal nerve. Both sensory and sympathetic effect is seen. And next, Canave's sign. So what is this? It is the area of maximum tenderness in the bursa infection, which can be elected over that the part of the bursa lying between the transverse palmar creases. And clinically, it can distinguish infections, tenosynovitis from superficial or localized abscess. So the effects are affected finger is slight flexion, uniform swelling over the affected tendon, tenderness over affected tendon, and pain on the passive extension of affected finger. So infection of the ring finger, middle finger spread mainly to the mid-palmar space, and the index finger infection to the thenar space, and the little finger infection spread to the ulnar bursa and the mid-palmar space. So this is important. And the FDP of the first lumbrical is nothing but thenar space, and FDP of 3-4-5 in the mid-palmar space, and lumbricals 2-3-4. So the neglected Whitlow lead to the necrosis of the distal 4/5 of the terminal phalanx. And the pulp of the space fingers have subcutaneous fat in the thigh compartments. It is formed by the fibrous septa extending from the skin to the periosteum of the terminal phalanx. And next, the Whitlow or pulp space infection. It is treated by the lateral incision. Complication is ischemic necrosis of distal 4/5 of the terminal phalanx. Tendon tenderness over affected tendon and pain on the passive extension of affected finger. So infection of the ring finger, middle finger spread mainly to the mid-palmar space, and the index finger infection to the thenar space, and the little finger infection spread to the ulnar bursa and the mid-palmar space. So this is important. And the FDP of the first lumbrical is nothing but thenar space, and FDP of 3-4-5 in the mid-palmar space, and lumbricals 2-3-4. So the neglected Whitlow lead to the necrosis of the distal 4/5 of the terminal phalanx. And the pulp of the space fingers have subcutaneous fat in the thigh compartments. It is formed by the fibrous septa extending from the skin to the periosteum of the terminal phalanx. And next, the Whitlow or pulp space infection. It is treated by the lateral incision. Complication is ischemic necrosis of distal 4/5 of the terminal phalanx due to the vessel occlusion. So the proximal 1/5 escapes as it is a part of a artery. Don't cross fibrous septa. And next, the lateral boundary of the anatomical subnerve is by EPB and ABPL as we discussed, and laterally by APL, EPB, and medially by EPL, roof by cephalic vein and superficial branch of radial nerve, and the floor by the radial styloid, scaphoid, trapezium, and the first metacarpal. Only contained is the radial artery in our anatomical snuff box. So we have completed even this. So finally we have some important points from the bits, and we have and we are going to complete our upper limb. So let us check out some of the important points. So axillary nerve is also known as the surgeon's nerve. So it's injured in the intramuscular injections mainly. So and also we have some other nerves like laborer's nerve is the median nerve, musician's nerve is the ulnar nerve, surgeon's nerve is the axillary nerve, and the nerve of Bell is the long thoracic nerve. So the course of axillary nerve, we need to again revise it. So the posterior cord of brachial plexus in the axilla, of course, exit the axilla with a quadrangular space to wind around the surgical neck of humerus. And next it gives a cutaneous supply to the lower part of the deltoid, and next it is nothing but the upper lateral cutaneous nerve form. And next the inferior dislocation of humerus and inadvertent intramuscular injection and injury to the axillary nerve by the fracture of surgical neck of humerus. So actually the fracture of surgical neck of humerus, all this injury leads to damage to our axillary nerve. And next the test we do is loss of sensation over the skin of lower part of deltoid muscle, because axillary nerve supplies deltoid muscle and also teres minor. And also we can see this is known as regimental batch anesthesia in case of lesion of the nerve. So there is loss of sense in the upper part of the posterior shoulder. So this is known as regimental batch anesthesia. And the injury to the median nerve at the wrist is tested by the contraction of abductor pollicis brevis. And next ape thumb deformity. Ape thumb forms by the non-use atrophy of the thenar eminence except the adductor pollicis, important bit. And next the lesion of the median nerve cause loss of sensation of the nail of the index finger, and the contents of the cubital fossa we can remember MBBR or MBBS. And next, adductor pollicis is nothing but the graveyard of ulnar nerve, because after supplying all muscles of the medial side, it ends laterally in the adductor pollicis. And its ulnar nerve, before its division into superficial and deep branch, it leads to the atrophy of hypothenar eminence and also numbness of the palmar aspect of the little finger. And it's a radial nerve, ulnar nerve, median nerve. Three can be tested in only one finger, that is the thumb finger, because the median nerve supplies the it helps in opposition by opponent's pollicis, and ulnar nerve in the adduction of the thumb, that is adductor pollicis and palmar introitium, and the radial nerve in the extensor by APL, EPP and also EPL. And next C6, C7. The root, injured thumb and index finger sensations are lost. And the power grip of the hand is a function of a long flexus extrinsic muscle of the hand, and precision grip is function of intrinsic muscles of the hand. What are those? That is adductor pollicis, palmaris brevis, introitiae, lumbricals, thenar and also hypothenar. And next the radial nerve injured in the case of deep laceration of radial side of wrist. And the roof of Guyon's canal is a palmar carpal ligament and palmaris brevis 2. And serratus anterior is tested by the raising hand above the head of affected side, and the card test is done for the palmar introitiae. And the anterior axial line extend up to the wrist joint, extension at MCP and flexion at IP, main and Griffith this is called. And ulnar nerve injury produce claw hand. The lesion of radial nerve is wrist drop. Claw hand is by ulnar nerve. Ape thumb deformity by median nerve. And the drooping of shoulder by trapezius rotated cuff is sits teres minor here. Teres major is supplied by lower subscapular nerve. And the latissimus dorsi function is to mainly extension, adduction, medial rotation of the arm. So these are some of the important points. And finally we have only this one, and we complete our upper limb. So injury to the spinal accessory nerve can cause both drooping of shoulder and also winging of scapula. And the triangular space or the upper triangular space between the axilla and the posterior scapular region contain the circumflex scapular artery and vein also. The Popois sign is the rupture of tendon of long head of biceps brachii, that is proximal tendon, and the long head of triceps and biceps brachii cross both shoulder and elbow joint. And it's the musculocutaneous nerve innervates coracobrachialis medial surface. And the FDS is not a composite muscle because it's supplied by C8 and T1. So what is composite muscle? It is usually innervated by greater than one nerve. Then it is composite muscle. ECRL and brachioradialis are supplied by radial nerve before its division into superficial and deep branches in lateral wall of cubital fossa. And PIN, that is posterior introitious nerve, innervates all extrinsic wrist extensors except the ECRL. And the lumbricals cause flexion at the MCP, metacarpophalangeal joint, and lateral to unipennate median nerve, and the medial two are bipennate by ulnar nerve. And Erb's paralysis affects the supraspinatus deltoid in biceps brachii muscles. Radial pulse is felt at the lateral to the tendon of flexor carpi radialis. And the skin of the nail bed of the ring finger is supplied by lateral half by median
and medial half by ulnar nerves. So this is all about upper limb.